I, 26F, stood beside my new husband, Liam, a plastic smile cemented on my face. The champagne flute in my hand felt impossibly heavy. Every eye in the rented hall was on his mother, Margaret, as she stood at the podium, basking in the spotlight she had created for herself. She raised her own glass, her voice echoing slightly through the microphone. "To my son, Liam," she began, her tone dripping with a practiced, saccharine sweetness that always set my teeth on edge. "I have waited for this day for so long. To see him find his perfect match." Liam squeezed my hand. I squeezed back, a silent signal of endurance. We just had to get through this. That's what we had told each other all night. Just get through the formalities and then we could relax. Margaret took a theatrical pause, scanning the crowd of smiling faces. Our friends, my family, her family, all of them watching, listening. "I have worried as mothers do," she continued, her voice lowering into a confiding, almost conspiratorial tone. "You see so many young people making mistakes, getting involved with the wrong sorts. But Liam, he always had a good heart, and a good head on his shoulders." Another pause. She looked directly at me, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I knew this woman. I knew her rhythms. This was not just a toast. It was a performance, and I was about to be made part of the act. "And I am just so glad," she said, her voice rising again with triumphant glee, "that he is finally marrying a wonderful, normal girl. A girl who isn't a gypsy." The words hung in the air. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by a few nervous titters from her side of the family. My own family looked confused, their smiles faltering. My mother's eyes found mine, a question mark in them. My father's hand tightened on her arm. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a direct shot. A poisoned arrow aimed not just at me, but at a part of me she knew nothing about. Or so I thought. Liam's ex-girlfriend, the one before me, was a beautiful, free-spirited artist who traveled a lot for her work. Margaret had despised her, openly referring to her with that same slur. Now, she was using it to elevate me by comparison, but it didn't feel like a compliment. It felt like a warning. It felt like a cage. Liam's grip on my hand went slack. He froze, his own smile plastered on his face, but his eyes were wide with a silent, panicked plea. "Don't react," they screamed at me. "Please, just let it go." I took a slow, deliberate breath. I kept my smile in place. I raised my glass as if nothing had happened, my movements feeling stiff and robotic. I would not give her the satisfaction of a scene. This was my wedding day, mine and Liam's. I would not let her burn it to the ground. But as the scattered, awkward applause began, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not forget this. This was a line, and she had just danced right over it. The sting of the insult was sharp, but the ice that was beginning to form around my heart was even colder. I had a feeling this was only the beginning. Later that night, when the guests had thinned and the band was playing softer music, Liam finally found the courage to speak. We were standing by the cake, what was left of it, a monument to a day that now felt tainted. "Ilara, I am so sorry," he whispered, his voice strained. "For what?" I asked, my own voice flat. I wanted to hear him say it. "For my mother," he said, looking down at his shoes. She gets a little carried away. She doesn't think before she speaks." "She seemed to think very clearly to me," I replied, refusing to let him off the hook that easily. "She chose her words with a lot of care," I thought. No, you don't understand," he said, finally looking at me. His eyes were desperate. "She was trying to compliment you, in her own twisted way. She hated Isabella. She was saying you're better than her." "By using a racial slur, Liam?" I asked. The question was quiet, but it was filled with the weight of the evening. "She thinks calling someone a gypsy is the worst insult in the world." And she thinks the best compliment she can give me is that I'm not one. She's from a different generation, he pleaded, reaching for my hand again. I let him take it, but my fingers remained limp. Their language is different. She didn't mean it to hurt you. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. He was making excuses. He was minimizing. He was prioritizing her comfort over my dignity. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to tell him about my grandmother, a proud Romani woman who taught me to read cards and to see the world with open eyes. I wanted to tell him about the tattoo on my back, the one hidden by the modest cut of my wedding dress. It was a family symbol, a winding vine with 3 small blossoms representing our past, present, and future. It was a piece of my soul, a piece of the very heritage his mother had just spat on. But I couldn't. Not now. Not when he was already in defense mode. He would see it as an attack, as me making things more difficult. So I held my tongue. That was my mistake. Please, he said, his voice cracking. Can we not let this ruin tonight? Can you just let it go? For me? I looked at his face, the face of the man I had just promised to spend my life with. He looked so torn, so miserable. And in that moment, I chose him. I chose peace. I chose to believe that this was an isolated incident, a terrible mistake that we could move past. Okay, Liam, I said, forcing another smile. For you, we'll let it go. He sagged with relief, pulling me into a hug. Thank you. He breathed into my hair. Thank you. I love you so much. I love you too, I said. But as I stood there in his arms, the word gypsy echoed in my head. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was not over. Letting it go was not the same as forgetting. The honeymoon was a blissful, temporary escape. On a white sand beach with the ocean whispering at our feet, it was easy to pretend that Margaret and her venomous words were a world away. Liam was attentive, loving, and apologetic. He promised me over and over again that he would talk to her. He would set boundaries. Things would be different when we got back. I allowed myself to believe him. I needed to believe him. Our return to reality was jarring. We moved into the small house we had bought together, a fixer-upper that was supposed to be our project. It was our fresh start. But Margaret's shadow loomed large. She would call Liam multiple times a day. She would drop by unannounced, a casserole in one hand and a dozen criticisms in the other. "Oh, you're painting the living room gray?" she'd say, wrinkling her nose. "Such a dreary color, it'll look like a prison." "I thought you were going to do something about that old carpet," she'd comment, nudging a frayed edge with her expensive shoe. "It's so unhygienic." Each comment was a small paper cut. Insignificant on its own, but together, they began to bleed me dry. I mentioned it to Liam, gently at first. "Your mom stopped by again today," I'd say. "Oh, that's nice," he'd reply, his eyes on his phone. "She said the curtains I bought were tacky," I'd add, trying to keep my tone light. He would sigh, a long, weary sound. "Alara, that's just her way. She's trying to help. Don't take everything so personally." The conversation was always the same. I was too sensitive. She was just trying to help. He was caught in the middle. I started to feel like I was going crazy. Was I overreacting? Chloe, my best friend, assured me I was not. "She's a classic narcissist, Elle," Chloe said over coffee one afternoon. "She's establishing dominance. And Liam is a classic enabler. He's letting her do it because it's easier than standing up to her." "But he promised he would talk to her," I insisted, clinging to that beachside promise. Chloe gave me a pitying look. "And has he?" I had to admit that he hadn't. Every time I brought it up, he had an excuse. The timing wasn't right. She was stressed about something else. He didn't want to cause a big fight. The real catalyst, the moment the ground truly shifted beneath my feet, came about 2 months after the wedding. I was working from home and my laptop had died. I remembered Liam had left his tablet on the coffee table. We had an unspoken agreement about sharing devices. We had no secrets. Or so I believed. I picked it up to send a quick email. As the screen lit up, I saw a notification banner at the top. It was a message from Margaret. The preview was short, but it made my blood run cold. It said, "Is she still being moody about the garden? You need to get her under control before the visit." My heart started to pound. The garden? We had a small disagreement the night before about what to plant in the front yard. I wanted wildflowers, something a bit wild and natural. Liam had wanted neat, orderly rose bushes, just like his mother's. It was a silly argument, forgotten by morning. Or so I had thought. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't stop myself. I opened the message thread. I told myself I was just looking for context for that one message. But as I started scrolling up, a pit of dread opened in my stomach. It was a long, ongoing conversation. It stretched back for months. Before the wedding. After the wedding. A running commentary on my life, my personality, my marriage. And it was all from Liam. He complained about my cooking. She tried to make that spicy dish again. You know how I hate that. He complained about my friends. Chloe came over. They just sat and gossiped for hours, so juvenile. He complained about my job. She had to work late again. It's like she cares more about that silly little company than our home. And then I saw it. A message from a few weeks before the wedding. Margaret had been ranting about Isabella, his ex. Liam's reply made me feel sick. "I know, Mom. You were right about her. I should have listened. But Alara's different. She's stable. Don't worry." And then, the one that broke me. A message sent the day after our argument about the garden. "It's the same old story," he had written to her. "She gets these wild ideas, wants everything to be unconventional. Guess I should have listened to you about her type. She's got that same streak Isabella had." Her type. That same streak. He was linking me to Isabella. He was using the same coded language his mother did. The Gypsy comment at the wedding wasn't a random, thoughtless blunder. It was the culmination of conversations like this. Liam hadn't just been silent. He had been feeding the fire. He had been painting me as this difficult, wild person to his mother, all while telling me to my face that he loved me just the way I was. I sat there on the sofa, the tablet heavy in my lap, and I felt something inside me snap. The hurt was immense, a physical ache in my chest. But underneath the hurt, a cold, hard anger was beginning to form. This wasn't just about his mother's prejudice anymore. This was about my husband's betrayal. He had made a choice. He had chosen to align himself with her, against me. And he had done it for months, secretly, while pretending to be my partner. I closed the tablet, my movements precise and calm. The time for hurt was over. The time for letting things go was over. Chloe was right. He was an enabler. But he was more than that. He was a participant. And I was the sacrifice he was willing to make to keep his mother happy. I stood up and walked to the bedroom. I opened my closet and looked at the row of clothes. My life with Liam felt like a costume I had been wearing. And it was time to take it off. I needed a plan. I wasn't just going to cry or scream or have it out with him. That's what he would expect. That's what would allow him to paint me as moody and emotional again. No, this required something else. This required strategy. This required justice. My first phone call was to Chloe. I didn't cry. My voice was steady, almost eerily so. "You were right," I said, the moment she answered. "About what? Margaret the monster?" she asked, her usual cheerful sarcasm in her voice. "About everything," I replied. "Liam, the enabling. It's worse than we thought." I explained what I had found on the tablet. I read some of the messages to her verbatim. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Oh, Alara," she finally said, her voice soft. "That's not enabling. That's a conspiracy." "I know. I said. He's been playing me this whole time, making me think I'm the crazy one, the one who's too sensitive, while he's been feeding his mother this narrative about me behind my back. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm not sure yet, I admitted, but I'm not confronting him. Not yet. If I do, he'll just deny it or twist it or say I violated his privacy. He'll make himself the victim. You need proof, Chloe said, her voice shifting from sympathetic to strategic. Hard proof. Things he can't deny. I have the texts, I said. Screenshot them. She instructed immediately. Email them to yourself. To me. Create a digital trail that's separate from his device. Right now. Her practicality was a lifeline. It cut through the fog of betrayal and gave me something concrete to do. While she was still on the phone, I picked up the tablet again. My hands were no longer shaking. They were steady. I went back into the messages, my heart a cold, hard lump in my chest. I scrolled and I screenshotted. Everything. The comments about my cooking, my friends, my job. The damning conversation about Isabella and my type, I captured it all. Then I emailed the collection of images to a new secret email address I created on the spot, and I sent a copy to Chloe for safekeeping. Done, I said, after sending the last one. Good, she said. Now, what's his endgame? Why is he so desperate to keep his mommy happy? It can't just be because he's a coward. I don't know, I said, but I'm going to find out. That night, when Liam came home, I was the perfect wife. I greeted him with a smile. I asked about his day. I made dinner, a bland chicken and vegetable dish that I knew he and his mother would approve of. I didn't mention the garden. I didn't mention his tablet. I watched him, searching for any sign of the man who had written those cruel words. He seemed completely normal. He laughed at my jokes. He told me he loved me before we went to sleep. It was like watching a performance by a very talented actor, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. The next day, I began my quiet investigation. I started by asking Liam seemingly innocent questions. I was thinking, I said over breakfast, we should really have your parents over for dinner soon. A proper thank you for all their help with the wedding. He looked up, surprised and pleased. Really? That's a great idea, Elle. Mom would love that. I want to make sure I get everything right, I continued, stirring my coffee. What's her favorite wine again? And does your dad still avoid red meat? I was fishing. I was testing his reactions. He answered easily, happy to help me plan an evening dedicated to pleasing his mother. He had no idea that I was gathering data, not on her preferences, but on his duplicity. A few days later, I tried a different angle. My company had announced a new, senior position that was a perfect fit for me. It would be a big promotion. I decided to use it as a test. Liam, I have amazing news, I said when he got home from work. I put on my most excited face. They posted that senior manager role, and my boss told me I should go for it. Wow, honey, that's great, he said. But there was a flicker of something in his eyes, a hesitation. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a wide smile. That's fantastic. You'd be perfect for it. It would mean more travel, though, I said, watching him carefully. And longer hours, probably. We'd manage, he said, pulling me into a hug. I'm so proud of you. You should absolutely apply. I felt a sliver of hope. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe he really did support me. 2 days later, Margaret called me. It was unusual. She almost always called Liam directly. Elara, dear, she said, her voice smooth as silk. Liam tells me you're thinking of applying for a big new job. Yes, I am, I said, my guard immediately up. Well, I was just thinking, she went on. You two are newlyweds. Is it really the best time to be taking on so much more responsibility at work? A marriage needs tending to, like a garden. You can't just let it get overgrown with weeds. The garden analogy was not lost on me. I think I can handle both, I said, my voice polite but firm. Of course, dear, she said, with a little laugh that sounded like tinkling glass. But you know how men are. Liam needs his wife at home. He needs a stable, peaceful environment. All that ambition, it can be very unsettling for a man. I felt the rage simmer. "Thank you for your concern, Margaret," I said, my jaw tight. "But I think Liam and I will be just fine." I hung up the phone. My hands were clenched into fists. He had done it again. He had gone straight to her. He had presented my ambition, my success as a problem, a threat to his stable, peaceful environment. The supportive husband to my face, the worried son behind my back. The inconsistency was no longer just a suspicion. It was a clear, undeniable pattern. He would tell me one thing and immediately report a twisted, negative version to his mother. I confronted him that evening, but I did it carefully. I didn't accuse. I questioned. "Your mom called me today," I said as we were cleaning up after dinner. "Oh?" he said, not looking at me. He was scrubbing a pan with a little too much force. "Yes," I said. She seemed concerned about me applying for the new job. She said it might be unsettling for you. He stopped scrubbing. He sighed, that same weary sigh I had come to despise. I might have mentioned it to her. She was just worried about you, about us. You know how she is. "What exactly did you mention, Liam?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Did you tell her you were proud of me and that we would manage? Or did you tell her you were worried I was becoming too ambitious?" He finally turned to look at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. He was a bad liar when cornered. I don't remember the exact words," he stammered. "Alara, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to start a fight? My mother and I were just talking. It's not a big deal." "It is a big deal to me," I said, stepping closer. "It's a big deal when my husband says one thing to my face and another to his mother. It makes me feel like I can't trust you." "You can trust me," he insisted, his voice rising. "I love you. Why is that not enough?" "Because love isn't enough when it comes with lies, Liam," I said. I saw the panic in his face, the desperate search for an escape route. He found one. "You're being too sensitive," he said, his voice hardening. "Just like she said, you twist everything into something negative. I can't say anything right. I'm going for a walk." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me alone in the kitchen. He had flipped the script. I was the problem. I was the one starting fights. I was the sensitive one. It was a masterful piece of gaslighting, honed by years of practice with his mother. But it didn't work. Not anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was furious, but my fury was cold and clear. He had confirmed everything. His defensiveness, his lies, his immediate retreat into blaming me. It was all the proof I needed. I went back to the tablet. I knew there had to be more. Chloe's question echoed in my mind. What's his endgame? It wasn't just about being a mama's boy. The level of deception was too high. The stakes had to be bigger than just keeping Margaret happy. I didn't look at his texts this time. I looked at his emails. I typed Margaret into the search bar. Most of it was mundane. Family photos, links to articles, plans for holidays. But then I saw a thread with a subject line that made me pause. Aunt Eleanor's estate. I clicked on it. It was a chain between Liam, Margaret, and a lawyer I didn't recognize. The first few emails were from months ago, before our engagement. Margaret was discussing her great-aunt, Eleanor, a woman I had only heard about in passing. She was apparently the matriarch of the family, ancient and enormously wealthy. As I read, my blood turned to ice. Margaret was writing to the lawyer, asking for clarification on Eleanor's will. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Davies, replied with a section of the will highlighted. It contained what he called a morality clause. The bulk of the estate was to be left to the family member who, in Eleanor's sole judgment, best exemplified the values of stability, tradition, and strong family bonds. My eyes scanned the emails, my heart hammering against my ribs. Margaret's messages were frantic. obsessive. Liam must be the one, she wrote. He is the most stable. He has a good job. He just needs the right wife. Not someone flighty. Eleanor is very old-fashioned. The wife is critical. Another email, this one to Liam, a week after he proposed to me. You've made the right choice. Alara seems sensible. She has a respectable job. She's pretty, but not in a way that would intimidate Eleanor. We just need to make sure she stays in line. No more of this unconventional nonsense you found so charming in Isabella. And then, the final devastating blow. An email from Margaret to Liam just last week. I am worried about this promotion she wants, Margaret wrote. It will make her seem like one of those career-obsessed women. Eleanor will not approve. A wife's place is in support of her husband's ambitions, not her own. You need to handle this, Liam. There are millions of dollars at stake. Don't let her moods and whims ruin this for our family. Liam's reply was just one sentence. I'll talk to her, Mom. I'll handle it. I leaned back, the tablet slipping from my fingers onto the sofa cushions. I felt a strange, hollow calm. It all made sense now. The Gypsy comment, the constant criticism, the lies, the manipulation. It wasn't just about prejudice or control. It was about money, millions of dollars. I was not a wife to them. I was a prop. A character in a play they were staging for an audience of one, Great Aunt Eleanor. My purpose was to be sensible, respectable, and not ambitious. My role was to help Liam secure his inheritance, and my husband, the man who promised to love and cherish me, was my director, feeding me my lines while secretly collaborating with the producer, his mother, on how to best manage his problematic leading lady. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, that it transcended anger. It was a moment of absolute, chilling clarity. I saw them for exactly what they were: greedy, manipulative, and cruel. And I saw myself as a fool forever believing their lies. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark street. Liam was still out there, walking off his manufactured frustration. He probably thought he had won the argument, that he had put me back in my box. He had no idea that I had just discovered the truth. He had no idea that the game had changed. They wanted me to play a role. Fine, I would play a role. But it wouldn't be the one they had cast me in. I would write my own script, and in my version, the villains did not get a happy ending. I thought about my grandmother. I thought about the stories she told me. Stories of cleverness, of survival, of turning the tables on those who would look down on you. She never taught me to be a victim. She taught me to be smart. A plan began to form in my mind, delicate and dangerous. It was centered around one event I had heard Margaret mention with breathless reverence: Great Aunt Eleanor's annual garden party. It was the social event of the season for their family. It was where Eleanor held court, observing her relatives, making her judgments. It was Margaret's personal Super Bowl. And it was going to be my stage. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Chloe. I know the end game. It's about an inheritance. Her reply was instantaneous. I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there. When Chloe arrived, I had a pot of tea ready. I was calm. I laid out the whole story for her, reading from the emails I had already forwarded to my secret account. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with every word. So you're not a wife, she said when I finished. You're an investment strategy. Exactly, I said, taking a sip of tea. And apparently I'm not performing up to their expectations. This is monstrous, Alara, she said, shaking her head. This is a whole new level of evil. What are you going to do? You have to leave him. Oh, I'm leaving him, I confirmed. But not yet. And not quietly. They used me. They tried to erase a part of who I am for money. They are not going to get away with it. And they are certainly not getting that inheritance. Chloe leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. Okay, I'm in. What's the plan? The plan, I said, is Great Aunt Eleanor's garden party. I spent the next few weeks in a state of quiet preparation. On the surface, I was the perfect, compliant wife. I apologized to Liam for being too sensitive. I told him I had decided not to apply for the promotion after all. I said I had realized he and his mother were right. It was too much to take on right now. The relief on his face was sickeningly palpable. He praised me for being so reasonable and wise. He bought me flowers. He thought he had won. He thought he had handled me. He and Margaret exchanged triumphant, knowing looks over Sunday dinner. They were so confident in their little scheme. They had no idea they were walking directly into my trap. My first move was to learn more about the other players. I needed an ally within the family. I remembered Liam mentioning a cousin of his father's, an Aunt Carol. He had described her as a bit of a black sheep, someone who didn't quite fit in with Margaret's polished, status-obsessed world. That sounded promising. I found her on social media. Her profile was full of pictures of her dogs, her messy garden, and articles about social justice causes. She seemed like the antithesis of Margaret. I sent her a message. "Hi, Carol," I wrote. "This is Alara, Liam's wife. I know we only met briefly at the wedding, but I was hoping I could ask you a question. I'm trying to find a good local animal shelter to volunteer at, and I saw you're a big animal lover." It was a pretext, but a genuine one. We exchanged a few messages about local shelters. She was warm, friendly, and unguarded. After a few days of back and forth, I decided to test the waters. "It's so nice talking to you," I wrote. "It can be a bit overwhelming, marrying into a new family, especially one as formal as Liam's." Her reply came quickly. "Formal is one word for it. Don't let Margaret intimidate you. Her bark is much worse than her bite, though both are pretty terrible." I had found my ally. We arranged to meet for coffee. I told Liam I was meeting an old college friend. In a cozy, anonymous coffee shop, I laid out a carefully edited version of the story for Carol. I didn't mention the inheritance. I focused on the emotional manipulation. I told her about the Gypsy comment. I told her about Margaret's constant criticism and Liam's refusal to stand up for me. Carol listened, her expression shifting from sympathy to a familiar, weary anger. "That sounds exactly like Margaret," she said, sighing. "She is obsessed with appearances, and she has always had Liam wrapped around her little finger. His father, Robert, just lets it happen. It's easier than fighting with her." "I just feel so alone in it," I said, allowing a bit of genuine vulnerability to show. "I feel like I'm going crazy." "You are not crazy," Carol said, reaching across the table and patting my hand. "You are sane in a house of mirrors. Listen to me. Margaret's power comes from people being afraid of her. Don't be afraid of her." "I'm trying not to be," I said. "I'm just not sure what to do. This garden party for Aunt Eleanor is coming up, and I'm dreading it. Margaret is already micromanaging what I'm going to wear." Carol's eyes lit up with a mischievous spark. "Ah, the annual performance review. Eleanor sees right through Margaret. You know, she's not a fool. She just enjoys the drama. But she is very, very serious about her principles. She hates liars and she hates bullies." That was the key. Hates liars and bullies. "Carol," I said, lowering my voice, "I have a suspicion that there's more to this than just Margaret's need for control. I think it might have something to do with Aunt Eleanor's will." Carol leaned in, her interest piqued. "Go on." "I can't prove anything yet," I said carefully. "It's just a feeling. But I think Margaret is coaching Liam, and trying to coach me, to present a certain image to Eleanor. An image of the perfect family." Carol nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on her face. "That would make a sickening amount of sense. The money is all anyone in that branch of the family ever thinks about." She looked me straight in the eye. "If you find any proof of that, Alara, you let me know. I've been waiting for someone to knock Margaret off her high horse for 30 years. "I'll keep my eyes open," I said. I had just given her the hint. The confirmation would come later. My next step was the dress. Margaret, believing I was now back in line, had taken it upon herself to help me choose an outfit for the party. She took me to a stuffy, conservative boutique she frequented. "Something modest, dear," she instructed, pulling a high-necked, long-sleeved floral dress from the rack. "Eleanor appreciates classic elegance. Nothing too flashy." "Of course, Margaret," I said with a docile smile. "Whatever you think is best." I let her buy me the dress. I thanked her profusely. I took it home and hung it in my closet. Liam was thrilled. "See?" he said. "It's so much easier when you just work with her, isn't it?" "You're right, Liam," I said. "So much easier." 2 days later, I went shopping by myself. I went to a different kind of store, a small, independent boutique downtown. I spent 2 hours trying on dresses. I was looking for something very specific. And then I found it. It was a simple, elegant sheath dress in a deep emerald green. The front was modest with a high neckline, but the back was a dramatic, plunging V-cut that went all the way down to the small of my back. It was beautiful, sophisticated, and it would display my tattoo perfectly. I bought it, along with a lightweight cashmere shawl in the same color. The shawl was a crucial part of the plan. It was my camouflage. The day of the garden party arrived. It was a perfect, sunny afternoon in late June. Eleanor's estate was magnificent, a sprawling old manor surrounded by acres of immaculate gardens. The air was thick with the scent of roses and the sound of polite chatter. I arrived with Liam, wearing the green dress, but with the cashmere shawl wrapped carefully around my shoulders, completely concealing the back. Margaret, dressed in a pale yellow suit that made her look like a wealthy lemon, rushed to greet us. Her eyes scanned my outfit, and a look of relief washed over her face. She couldn't see the back of the dress. She just saw the modest front and the expensive-looking shawl. "Oh, Elara, you look lovely," she gushed, patting my arm. "So elegant, see? I knew you had good taste in you somewhere." Liam beamed, proud of his well-behaved wife. I smiled back, a placid, serene smile that revealed nothing of the storm brewing inside me. We mingled. I played my part. I made small talk about the weather and the beautiful flowers. I let Liam guide me from one boring conversation to another. Margaret hovered nearby, watching me like a hawk, occasionally swooping in to correct or guide me. "Don't talk about your job, dear," she whispered in my ear at one point. "It's dreadfully boring for people." "Of course, Margaret," I murmured. I saw Aunt Carol across the lawn. She caught my eye and gave me a subtle, encouraging nod. She was stationed near a large, shaded gazebo where an old woman sat in a comfortable-looking wicker throne, holding court. Great Aunt Eleanor. She was smaller than I had imagined, but she had an undeniable presence. Her eyes were sharp and missed nothing. The afternoon wore on. The sun grew warmer. I started to feel a bit too warm with the shawl on. "Liam, darling, it's getting a little hot," I said, fanning myself with my hand. "I think I'm going to take this shawl off." Panic flared in his eyes. "Oh no, don't," he said quickly. You might get a sunburn on your shoulders." "I'll be fine," I said with a breezy smile. "I'll stay in the shade." Before he could protest further, I unwrapped the shawl. I folded it neatly over my arm, and I turned my back to him, pretending to look at a particularly beautiful rosebush. I felt his sharp intake of breath behind me. I knew he had seen it. The tattoo, stark and intricate against my skin, now fully on display. I could feel his panic radiating from across the lawn. I could also feel Margaret's laser-like gaze lock onto me. I glanced over my shoulder. Her face was a mask of horror. Her mouth was a thin, white line. She started making her way toward me, weaving through the clusters of guests with the determination of a heat-seeking missile. This was it. The show was about to begin. I turned and began to walk, not away from her, but in a slow, deliberate path that would take me directly toward the gazebo where Great Aunt Eleanor was sitting. I could feel Margaret's frantic energy behind me. "Elara," she hissed, catching up to me and grabbing my arm. Her grip was like a talon. "What do you think you're doing?" Put that shawl back on. Now. I stopped and looked at her. I didn't smile. I'm warm, Margaret, I said, my voice calm and even. You are making a spectacle of yourself, she seethed, her voice a low, furious whisper. Cover that. That thing on your back. What will Eleanor think? I don't know, I said. Maybe we should ask her. Her eyes widened in terror. That was the last thing she wanted. She saw she was losing control. Her grip tightened on my arm. You will not ruin this. Liam, she called out, her voice sharp. Liam hurried over, his face pale and sweaty. Alara, honey, please, he begged. Just put the shawl on. Let's not make a scene. You're the ones making a scene, I said, my voice still quiet, but now carrying a new edge of steel. I looked from Liam's desperate face to Margaret's enraged one. You're terrified of this tattoo, aren't you? A little bit of ink? Why? It's inappropriate, Margaret snapped. It's common. It's my family, I said. Before they could react, a new voice cut through the tension. It was clear and strong with the crackle of old age. Margaret, let go of the girl's arm. We all turned. Great Aunt Eleanor was looking directly at us. She had been watching the whole exchange. The small crowd around her had gone silent, their attention now fixed on our little drama. Margaret dropped my arm as if it were on fire. She immediately pasted on a sickly sweet smile. Eleanor, I was just telling Alara how lovely her dress is. Eleanor's sharp eyes did not waver. She ignored Margaret completely. Her gaze was on me, specifically on my back. Young lady, she said, her voice commanding attention. Come here. Liam tried to hold me back. Aunt Eleanor, we shouldn't bother you. I shook his hand off my arm and walked forward, my head held high. I stopped a few feet in front of her chair. The silence was absolute. Everyone was watching. Eleanor gestured toward my back with a wrinkled, bejeweled hand. Turn around. Let me see that. I turned, presenting my back to her and to the assembled crowd. I could hear a few soft gasps. Margaret made a choked, strangled sound. What is that? Eleanor asked, her voice filled with genuine curiosity. I turned back to face her. I looked her directly in the eye. It is a family symbol from my grandmother's side, I said, my voice clear and steady. It's a sastimos. My grandmother was Romani. The word landed like a stone in a silent pond. Romani, the more respectful, accurate term for the people Margaret had so casually dismissed as gypsies. Margaret gasped, a loud theatrical sound. She's lying. That's not true. Liam, tell her it's not true. Liam just stood there, frozen, his face ashen. He looked like a cornered animal. This was my moment. This was the scene I had written. I am in the present now. I looked directly at Margaret, my expression unreadable. I'm lying? I ask, my voice dripping with false innocence. But Margaret, you were so happy about it at my wedding. Don't you remember your speech? You said you were so glad Liam wasn't marrying a gypsy. My eyes flicked to Eleanor, then back to Margaret. Were you hoping to keep that a secret from Aunt Eleanor? Was my heritage inconvenient for your plans? Margaret's face crumples. The mask is gone. All that is left is raw, ugly panic. I was making a joke. A joke? I press on, my voice getting stronger. It didn't sound like a joke. And it doesn't seem like Liam thought it was a joke either. He's been telling you for months that I have a wild streak, hasn't he? Comparing me to his ex. Was that part of the plan to make sure I seemed like a proper wife? The kind of wife who would help him secure an inheritance? The word inheritance hangs in the air, charged and dangerous. Liam flinches as if struck. Aunt Carol, who had been standing near the gazebo, now steps forward. Her expression is one of grave concern. Margaret, is this true? What Alara is saying? Have you been trying to interfere with Eleanor's will? Margaret sputters, unable to form a coherent sentence. She looks at Liam, pleading with her eyes for him to save her. But Liam is broken. He just stares at the ground, defeated. I turn my full attention back to Eleanor. Her face is like granite, her eyes cold and hard. It's true, Aunt Eleanor, I say, my voice ringing with conviction. For months they have been manipulating me, trying to mold me into what they think you want to see. A quiet, ambitionless, normal girl. They were afraid my actual personality, my background, my family's heritage would jeopardize the millions of dollars they are so desperate to get from you. Proof, Eleanor says, her voice a low rasp. These are terrible accusations. The proof is in Liam's email, I say calmly. There is an entire email thread between Margaret, Liam, and a lawyer named Mr. Davies. In it, they discuss the morality clause in your will. They talk about me as a strategic asset. Margaret writes, and I quote, "We just need to make sure she stays in line." Liam, in turn, promises to handle me. I pause, letting the words sink in. I have copies of every single email. The silence that follows is profound. Eleanor's gaze shifts from me to Margaret, then to Liam. The contempt on her face is terrifying to behold. She looks at Margaret, whose face has gone a blotchy, mottled red. She looks at Liam, who is visibly trembling. Finally, she speaks. Her voice is no longer loud, but it cuts through the silence like a shard of ice. "Margaret," she says, "you have been a grasping, foolish woman your entire life. I have tolerated it. I have found it pathetic. But I have tolerated it." She turns her gaze to Liam. "And you. I thought you had some spine, some character. But you are just a weak, greedy little boy, hiding behind your mother's skirts." She takes a slow, shaky breath. "To think," she says, her voice filled with disgust, "that you would use this young woman, your own wife, in such a disgusting prejudice scheme. You would mock her heritage, a heritage of a people who have faced persecution for centuries, all for money." She looks back at me. Her expression softens, just slightly. "You, young lady, have more courage and integrity in your little finger than this entire branch of my family has in their whole bodies." Eleanor then raises her voice, ensuring everyone on the lawn can hear her. "This party is over. Get out of my home, all of you." She points a trembling finger at Margaret and Liam. "Especially you two. You are no longer welcome here. Not ever again." She looks at her personal assistant, who is standing by with a phone. "And get my lawyer on the line. I am rewriting my will, effective immediately." The aftermath was swift and brutal. Margaret and Liam were ushered off the property like common criminals, their faces a mixture of shame and disbelief. The other guests dispersed quickly, whispering amongst themselves. The garden party had ended in a scandal that would be talked about for years. I remained by the gazebo. Aunt Carol came and stood beside me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "You actually did it." A few minutes later, Eleanor's assistant approached me. "Miss Eleanor would like to speak with you inside," she said politely. I followed her into the grand, quiet house. Eleanor was sitting in a large armchair in a sun-filled library, a glass of water in her hand. She looked tired, but the fire was back in her eyes. "Sit down, child," she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her. I sat. I didn't know what to expect. A lecture? An apology? "That was quite a performance," she said, a wry smile touching her lips for the first time. "It wasn't a performance," I replied quietly. "It was the truth." "I know," she said, her smile fading. "That's what makes it so damned impressive. And so damned depressing." She sighed, a sound that seemed to come from deep within her. "My family has become a nest of vipers, squabbling over money they haven't earned. I apologize for what you have been put through. No one deserves to be treated that way." "Thank you," I said. It was more than I had ever gotten from my own husband. "Tell me about your grandmother," she said unexpectedly. "The Romani woman, What was her name? Her name was Zita, I said, surprised. She was strong and kind, and she taught me to be proud of who I am, no matter what anyone else thinks. Eleanor nodded slowly. A wise woman, wiser than my sister, Margaret's grandmother, who taught her children that money and status were the only things that mattered. She was silent for a long moment, lost in thought. Then she looked at me, her eyes sharp again. I meant what I said. I am rewriting my will. Liam and Margaret will not receive a single cent. It's a pity, but they brought it on themselves. She continued, I am going to make a substantial donation to a charity, one that supports Romani culture and rights. I'm going to do it in your grandmother's name. Zita's fund, perhaps. It seems fitting. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. That's incredibly generous. I managed to get out. It's justice, she corrected me. As for the rest, Carol will be well taken care of. She's a good woman, despite her terrible taste in dogs. A ghost of a smile again. And you. I would like to help you as well. You will be starting over. It will be difficult. A divorce is never easy. I appreciate that, Eleanor, I said, finding my voice. I really do, but I can't accept any money. This was never about money for me. It was about respect. She studied me for a long time. I believe you, she said finally. But my offer of friendship stands. I find I am in short supply of people I can actually respect. I would be honored if you would come for tea sometime. And you can tell me more about Zita. I would like that very much, I said. And I meant it. I left Eleanor's house feeling lighter than I had in months. The weight of the deception, the lies, the constant self-doubt, it was all gone. I had spoken my truth, and I had been heard. The drive home was silent. I had taken a taxi, leaving Liam to find his own way back. When I walked into our house, the house we were supposed to build a life in, it felt cold and foreign. I went straight to the bedroom and started packing a bag. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the essentials. Half an hour later, Liam walked in. His face was blotchy, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked completely broken. Ilara, he croaked. What are you doing? I'm leaving, Liam, I said, not stopping my packing. He rushed forward and grabbed my hands, forcing me to stop. No, please don't. We can fix this. I can fix this. I pulled my hands away. I looked him in the eye. There is nothing to fix, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. It's broken. You broke it. I know, he cried, tears streaming down his face now. I know, I messed up. I was stupid, I was weak. I was so scared of my mother and so scared of losing that money. It was never about you. I love you. I swear I love you. Do you? I asked, a genuine question. Because it doesn't feel like love, Liam. It feels like you used me. You took my heritage, something personal and important to me, and you turned it into a liability. You conspired with your mother to mock me and control me. You didn't just lie to me. You sold a piece of my soul for a chance at a payout. I'll make it up to you, he begged, sinking to his knees in front of me. He grabbed my legs, clinging to me. I'll cut her off. I'll never speak to her again. We can move away. We can start over. Please, Ilara, don't leave me. I looked down at the top of his head, at this man sobbing at my feet. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, no love. Just a vast, empty space where all of those feelings used to be. It's too late, I said. The man I married, or the man I thought I married, is gone. Maybe he never existed. All I see now is a stranger. A weak, greedy stranger who hurt me for his own gain. I gently detached his hands from my legs and stepped around him. I zipped up my bag. Where will you go? He whispered, still on the floor. To Chloe's, I said. My lawyer will be in touch with yours on Monday. I walked out of the bedroom, out of the house, and I didn't look back. The sound of his sobbing followed me out the door, but it faded as I got into my car and drove away. The next few weeks were a blur of legalities and logistics. I stayed with Chloe, who was a rock of support. She kept me fed, let me cry when I needed to, and made me laugh when I thought I couldn't. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman recommended by Chloe, was thrilled with the evidence I provided. The screenshots of the texts, the emails, Liam's public humiliation. It made for a very strong case. "He's not going to fight you on anything," she said after her first call with his lawyer. "He's terrified. He just wants this to be over. They're not even contesting the division of assets. You'll get your half of the house equity. No questions asked." Liam tried to call me a few times. I didn't answer. He sent long, rambling emails full of apologies and promises. I deleted them without reading past the first line. There was nothing he could say that would change anything. Margaret, true to form, tried a different tactic. She started leaving me voicemails. The first few were furious. "You have ruined my family," she shrieked in one message. "You are a vindictive, evil little snake. You planned this all along, didn't you? You came into our lives to destroy us." When I didn't respond, her tone changed. The next few messages were pleading. "Alara, please, you have to talk to Liam. He is a mess. He won't eat. He won't leave the house. You're his wife. You have to help him. A marriage is for better or for worse." I almost laughed at the hypocrisy. She was the one who had treated our marriage as a business transaction. Now she was appealing to the sanctity of it. I blocked her number. Aunt Carol called me about a week after the party. "Just thought you'd like an update from the front lines," she said, her voice cheerful. "Margaret is a social pariah. None of the family will talk to her. Even her own book club has kicked her out. Apparently, gossip travels fast." "And Liam?" I asked, my voice hesitant. "Moping around his parents' house," she said. "Robert finally grew a backbone, apparently. He told Margaret that this was her fault, that her greed and her prejudice had cost their son his wife and their family its reputation. They're barely speaking." "Wow," I said. I felt a strange pang of something, not quite pity, but a sadness for the sheer totality of the destruction. "Don't you dare feel sorry for them," Carol said, as if reading my mind. "They built that house of cards themselves. You just had the courage to blow on it." She paused. "Eleanor asks about you, by the way. She wants to know when you're free for that tea." I ended up having tea with Eleanor the following week. It was a strange, surprisingly pleasant afternoon. We sat in her library again, and I told her stories about my grandmother Zita. I told her about her kindness, her mischievous humor, her resilience. "She sounds like a remarkable woman," Eleanor said, her eyes thoughtful. "You have her spirit." "I try to," I said. "That fund I mentioned," she continued, "it's been established. The Zita Foundation for Cultural Heritage. It will provide grants to Romani artists and scholars. I've named you an honorary board member if you'll accept. You don't have to do anything. It's just a title." But I thought it was fitting. Tears pricked my eyes. "Thank you, Eleanor. That means more than you know." "It's the least I can do," she said. "My family tried to erase your heritage. The least we can do is help to celebrate it." We became unlikely friends after that. We would meet for tea every few weeks. She was sharp, funny, and had a wealth of stories about her long life. In a way, she filled a small part of the void my own grandmother had left. She became a mentor, a confidant. The divorce was finalized quickly and cleanly. I used the money from the sale of the house to get my own apartment, a bright, airy space that was all mine. I decorated it exactly as I wanted, with wildflowers in a vase on the table and colorful, unconventional art on the walls. I applied for that promotion at work, and I got it. The travel was demanding but exciting. I felt alive, free. About a year later, I was having lunch with Chloe when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Aunt Carol. It was a link to a news article from a local society paper. The headline read, "Eleanor Vance, philanthropist and matriarch, leaves fortune to charity and distant relatives. Son of nephew, disinherited. The article detailed how Eleanor's massive fortune had been divided. A huge portion went to the Zaida Foundation. Another large chunk went to Aunt Carol. Smaller bequests went to other cousins and relatives. And then there was one specific damning line. Noticeably absent from the will was Liam Davies, great-nephew of the deceased, and his mother, Margaret Davies, who were explicitly disinherited following a family dispute last year. It was final. It was public. Their greed had earned them nothing but public shame. Chloe read the article over my shoulder. Wow, she breathed. Checkmate. I took a sip of my wine, a small smile on my face. She hated liars and bullies, I said, echoing what Carol had told me all that time ago. That evening, I was looking through an old photo album. I found a picture of my grandmother Zita. She was young, her dark eyes sparkling with life and laughter. Tucked into the sleeve of the album behind the photo was a tarot card she had given me years ago. The Justice card. A woman holding a sword and scales, a symbol of truth, fairness, and consequences. I thought about Liam and Margaret. I wondered if they had seen the article. I wondered if they finally understood the consequences of their actions. They had tried to make me small, to fit me into a box of their own making. They had judged me based on their own ugly prejudices. I thought about the speech Margaret gave at my wedding. I'm so glad he's finally marrying a girl who isn't a gypsy. She thought she was paying me a compliment, securing her prize. But all she did was reveal her own rotten core. She wanted a proper, respectable wife for her son. She got one. She just never bothered to understand what true respectability was. It wasn't about being quiet, or modest, or ambitionless. It was about being honest. It was about being proud of who you are. And Liam. He learned the hardest lesson of all. He had a choice between love and money, between his wife and his mother, between integrity and greed. He chose wrong, and in the end, he lost everything. He learned that some things, once you sell them, can never be bought back. Especially not your own soul. I put the photo album away. My life was my own now, built on my own terms, colored with my own choices. The past was a story I had survived. The future was a blank page, and I was the only one holding the pen. And I was finally free to write whatever I wanted.